By the time we reach this chapter, I'm deep into creating and stabilizing girls football in Alberta. COVID had been a disruption, no question, but we'd found our footing again. The division was growing, programs were being built, the staff was in place. For the first time in a long time, I'd created enough momentum and brought enough people in that the work could keep going without me driving every piece of it. And that's when life interrupts. It started with a call from Rick, and suddenly everything accelerated. Friday, the call to schedule the interview. Monday, the interview. Thursday, the offer. The following Monday, I was on a flight to BC. A day later, my hiring was public. There wasn't time to overthink it, which in hindsight was probably a blessing. What I remember most from that stretch wasn't certainty. It was whiplash. Shock, excitement, fear, imposter thoughts. And one question looping on repeat. Is this actually happening? Leaving Alberta carried weight. I'd spent years building something from nothing, not just teams, but systems, culture, belief. Walking away meant trusting that it wouldn't stall or fall apart, and that the people counting on it wouldn't be let down. Around the same time, Football Canada officially adopted the U18 Girls Nationals as an NSO-backed program. I'd been chosen as the general manager. My coaching staff was already selected, and then I had to pass the torch. That staff has since won 3 gold medals and a silver. That mattered to me more than people realize, because it proved I hadn't built dependency. I'd built something that could outlive me. And just like that, I stepped into the CFL. In 2022, I joined the BC Lions as a defensive assistant, becoming the first female coach in CFL history. I remember presenting a CFL award later that year and thinking, this is really real now. For the first time, I felt an intensity of respect I hadn't always felt in amateur football spaces. I belonged, and I knew it. The biggest learning curve that first year wasn't the X's and O's. It was everything else. The day-to-day operations, the flow of a professional season, the routines everyone else just knew. There's a lot of taken for granted knowledge in the CFL. When everyone around you has it, it becomes invisible. No one thinks to explain it because it's just how things are done. So you watch, you adapt, you try not to make mistakes. Every small moment reminded me that even though I was in, I was still learning how to belong. As the season wrapped up, ending with a disappointing semifinal loss, I realized how little I understood about what came next. I knew I was on a 1-year contract, and nothing beyond that was guaranteed. Quietly, doubt crept in. Was I good enough for them to want me back? Or had this been an experiment that didn't quite work? Looking back, I can see how much of my self-worth I tied to external validation. I needed the re-signing to mean something about me. At the same time, I was learning something else. I didn't have the capacity to keep building girls and women's football the way I had before. The season took everything. The off-season became about recovery and survival, emotionally and financially. The thing that had always grounded me was slipping further out of reach. 2023 was my second season as a defensive assistant with the BC Lions. And it came with growth, but also clarity. That year, Nadia entered the CFL with the Ottawa Redblacks, becoming the second female coach in the league. The door opened a little wider, not just for us, but for what felt possible. The CFL also changed the structure of the combine. Instead of focusing almost entirely on testing and one-on-ones, the new format introduced full practices and a scrimmage. You could finally see players as football players. How they learned, how they interacted in meetings, how they responded to coaching. I was asked to coach the defensive line for the inaugural year of this structure. Before the CFL, I was used to responsibility. Decision-making, leading, owning outcomes. In the league, I was back at the bottom of the hierarchy. But the combine put me back in a space I understood. Just on a much bigger stage with more developed athletes. I was nervous. I was worried I wouldn't know enough. What I realized instead, that my strength wasn't knowing everything. It was how I coached. Connection, clarity, emotional intelligence, teaching, not just directing. At the end of the day, the combine is a high-level development camp. And for some players, their last moment in the game. That experience matters. The opportunity rebuilt my confidence. And that same year, we launched the women's flag football camps with the BC Lions, a program built from scratch to expand access and opportunity. Another small step forward. 2024 brought a second opportunity to coach the defensive line at the combine, and this one carried more weight than the first. After watching the athletes I supported and coached in year one step into their professional seasons and succeed, I understood the impact I could have in these spaces. By my third season, confidence had replaced uncertainty. Instead of staying where I was most comfortable, I made the choice to spend the full season in the defensive backs room. I was a linebacker by trade. I had spent years working with the defensive line. But growth wasn't going to come from staying there. It involved match coverage and lots of passionate discussions. That season became one of the most defining of my career. Equal parts familiar and uncomfortable. And a reminder that expansion only happens when you're willing to step into rooms you don't yet own. At the end of the 2024 season, everything shifted. We didn't have a strong year. There was change, tension, uncertainty. And then our head coach was relieved of his duties. We were told what we already knew, because he told us himself. What came next was harder. We were told a new head coach would be hired, that they would be free to choose their staff, but I would be recommended to them. That was mid-November. By the start of December, a new head coach had been hired, and I still hadn't heard anything. No update, no conversation, no clarity. So I made a decision. I moved forward with another job opportunity. I signed the contract. I chose forward motion because sitting in limbo was eating at me. And then the very next day, my phone rang. I knew what the call was before I answered it. The world starts to spin, your breathing gets shallow, your body goes rigid, bracing for impact, even as you try and stay calm. I was told the new head coach had decided not to bring me back. Even though I'd already made my decision, the reality of not being re-signed still hit hard. Not long after, I found out the other female coach in the CFL wouldn't be returning either. Just like that, the league went from making history, 2 full-time female coaches, to none. That moment forced a reckoning. If I chased another CFL job, another contract, another move, I'd be stepping right back into the same cycle. I looked around at the life I had in BC. The community, the relationships, the unfinished work. and I asked myself a different question. What if staying wasn't settling? What if staying was choosing something on purpose? During the 2024 season, I was working closely with Football BC on trying to field a U18 girls tackle team for nationals. And once again, I ran into the same reality. Time, capacity, resources. Eventually, we accepted that financially, a U18 team wasn't realistic, and that many athletes were still too young. That's where the idea of a cross-province U16 game came from. Less commitment, fewer athletes, lower financial burden. After conversations with the Western provinces, Alberta said yes. And then the time finally came. We officially created the first ever U16 all-girls tackle team in British Columbia. We took them to compete in the Battle of the Rockies against Alberta. The province I now call home on one sideline, the province where I built everything on the other. I was overwhelmed with emotion. It felt like watching my past and my present stand on the same field at the same time. A full circle moment. There are parts of CFL coaching I miss deeply, but stepping away gave me perspective. Before this, football was about how much I could carry. Now, it's about what I choose. Stepping away didn't shrink my voice or my impact. It gave it room. I stopped asking if I was wanted and started deciding where I belonged. Standing here now, I feel motivated, reflective, grounded. I understand now that growth is layered. Purpose evolves, and sometimes the path forward is bigger than anything you imagined. I think back to a conversation with a Lions player late in the 2024 season. Coach T, do you think you might be too big for this team, this league, this game? Like you're meant to do something more? A year later, both of us are finding out. These 4 episodes form the arc. Humble beginnings, the breakthrough, creating space, next level. Now, we go deeper into the stories, lessons, growth, into the gritty truth of what the game teaches us. This is Blitz and Bloom.